Aircraft maker Boeing is in deep crisis management as Australia joins Europe and China in banning its 737 MAX. That's following 2 fatal crashes in 5 months.
Customers are boycotting the planes. The company's share price has been hammered. So how should Boeing and airlines generally be handling the situation? And are there lessons for other businesses in this? For tonight's Taking Stock, we're joined by Greg Baxter, partner at Newgate Communications, a crisis management specialist, and Angela Vathulkas, founder of the Small Business Party. Thanks to both of you. Kick off with you, Greg, because we were fascinated to think about how you might manage the situation if you're called in by Boeing. Because something that's interesting about it seems like a crisis of confidence on the internet and elsewhere in a lot of ways when you consider the actual authorities on the situation and Boeing itself. It's certainly not pulling the planes from the airs. So how would you deal with it?
Well, I think that's the first question, is why aren't you grounding the planes?
Okay.
And they've said, they say several things. They say safety is our top priority. That's hard to believe, having not grounded the planes.
Right.
They don't know what caused the accident. They don't know what problems the pilot reported before he crashed. They don't know how similar or different it is to the previous crash 5 months ago. So they can't be confident in almost anything at this point. And I would have thought that's good enough to be grounding a fleet.
Okay.
Or at the very least recommending that everybody grounds the fleet and checks out the suspected systems before they put them back in the air.
So you probably reckon it's being mishandled at the moment?
Well, I think at a fundamental level, I mean, Europe, the UK, China, India, Australia, most of the airlines in South America even have grounded this aircraft. Or their regulators have said, you should ground the aircraft. Right? The United States and Canada are pretty much alone now at letting it still fly. So, I mean, that raises all sorts of questions for me. So, in the event that it's practically impossible to ground hundreds and hundreds of planes, what do you do? Well, I think you have to provide reassurance about the basis of your confidence. And looking at Boeing's statements, which honestly are quite derisory in how inadequate they are, they're not explaining the basis of their confidence at all. They're simply saying that they are confident. That safety is their top priority, and I think that is why we're seeing the reaction that we are seeing, because there's no substantive reassurance coming from the airline at all, as far as I can see.
It's interesting. I mean, of course, this is a specific example dealing with one company and its product. Angela, when you see this, do you see lessons learnt for everybody else out there who has a business?
Well, obviously, this is catastrophic proportions, and I had hoped that this was one subject that Trump wouldn't comment on. Yes, he did have an opinion on this as well. Ironically, he's like...
A lot of experts say he's not that off the mark.
Blaming... Well, that's the irony, isn't it?
We're all so surprised when he says something.
It's the software, you know. He's like, you know, it's too sophisticated, it's too modern. What's wrong with the old-fashioned way where you actually needed the pilot? Bit like how we learn to drive now. We used to look over our shoulder. Now we're relying on the technology in the car. So it's not handled well. I think, you know, as Greg said, you can read between the lines with the statement that Boeing's put out. It's like, we won't say much. We won't commit to anything. We'll just say, you know, safety is a priority for us, but
to see here.
And just kind of, lean back and wait.
The US regulator is going to issue a new airworthiness certificate for this aircraft. And my question is, how? How is that possible to issue and say this aircraft is airworthy at this point when 2 of them have gone down in 5 months?
And as you said, the second one, they don't actually know why or much detail
it's not the chocolate production line where you randomly taste test every 10th one and it's okay.
And then when they say, it's a part of a software problem, well, as someone said, this is kind of treating flights with real-life passengers as like a debugging routine for your software. Like, let's try this one.
Control-Alt-Delete,
Turn it off
so there's a bit of an issue.
And turn it back on again.
You've got to wait 5 minutes before you turn it back on.
That's right. IT always tells me that engineering and have a problem. Just turn it off, turn it back on. They're always right, unfortunately. But you reckon they got to do the right thing, recall the planes?
Absolutely.
Would you jump on one?
Safety, and that's just it right now.
Starting with I would jump on one.
That's assuming you know that you're about to get on one. Because not everyone is going to go, what plane is it?
They might after all the...
Well, they should.
I think they will. And I think
reckon?
Qantas is well known that whenever there's an accident, anywhere in the world, of any airline, it will immediately check its aircraft, regardless of, you know, next time they land anywhere in the world. They'll do some preliminary checks to see if they then have to take more significant action. I think a lot of airlines probably do that as well. I mean, this would seem... These planes are just taking off and landing all day long, like nothing's happened.
Well, there are so many. There's something like a third of the company's operating profit, so an absolute cash cow.
They've done the numbers. Someone sat there at the back, in the back room, the actuary, and he's gone, if we do nothing and bad things happen, it will cost us this. If we ground all the planes and do the right thing, it will cost us this. This is more expensive than this. Let's go with the other one.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Greg, maybe you could help us understand the urgency in a place like Boeing to get this sorted, because the share price has been smashed. We're seeing people in airports fair enough, and people refusing to get on planes. So, you know, are they just trying to get through this as quickly as possible to weather the storm?
Well, they had a similar issue with the Dreamliner in 2013, and their share price tanked at that point and recovered in that year. I think it went up about 80 or 90% from January to December, because the problem had been identified and they'd rectified it. Okay, so and I'm sure that they will identify and rectify this issue, and their share price will recover and people will get on board this aircraft and happily fly all over the world. I mean, they've got orders for 5,000 of them at the moment. Virgin, I think, has ordered 30 or 40. So I've no doubt that this will be a very successful aircraft for them, but I just think that they need to be doing more around reassuring people. I mean, I went on YouTube to see if I could find any video of anybody from Boeing speaking to a camera about this. No. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but I couldn't find it.
Okay, so they should have been in front of every camera possible on the news programmes.
Who's their competitor? Who's their closest?
Well, they're hiding behind the regulator.
The orders are in.
And the regulator, of course, is anonymous as well. It's just a regulator.
Right. Well, look, we're going to have to leave that topic behind, because we've got another one here. Clive Palmer's campaign has made a splash in the media yet again today. Now, with revelations this time that his merchandise is actually made in China. Now, that's making headlines because it's one of his key campaign messages here is that he's the party that's going to be fighting to keep jobs in Australia and stop them from being exported to China. So one of his party's members, Brian Wiseman, has already quit after discovering the Made in China tags here. I mean, red-faced, or is this just the way the world is? I think we saw something along these lines with Donald Trump's Make America Great hats again. So what do you think, Angela?
Look, it is much cheaper to import that quantity from China, I know, having recently had to invest again in campaign T-shirts. But we always invest locally. We make a big point of that. That's buying them locally, but they probably do end up coming from China at some point anyway. So you're probably going to find, you're probably going to find that a difficult route anyway. So he's red-faced. As red-faced as Clive can get, because he pretty much doesn't care. And I would say that the candidate that resigned, there was probably another issue as well, which we will find out soon enough. So it's never one thing. I think the other irony of here is that he's going out preaching. Him and the 500 candidates I think I saw in the paper the other day, they were all lined up about how many are actually running. And one of their big policy bases is, of course, that it should be all about looking after local businesses and manufacturing, etc., etc. He's not walking the walk, he's not talking the talk. There are so many small businesses here who are being squeezed out by big business, and the fact that we aren't paying any attention to them stuns me. And yet Clive's getting front page, and he's got the So
I personally don't think it'll have any impact on anyone's vote, because his flyers from 2013, they were made in China, and anyone who's going to vote for him,
no, he's just
probably going to still vote for him. Anyone who wasn't, probably unchanged.
This election, I think, more than almost any other, will have a longer list of people who claim things that aren't true, don't add up, don't make sense, can't be reconciled with any basis in fact. This is just another example.
Right, add that to the list. Add it to the list. The list we're talking about today.
Zero care factor from him. So.
I don't think he minds too much. He's got a few other things going on. He's in the middle of a lawsuit with Twisted Sister. I mean, you know, he's got a lot going on. He's got other issues. Now, we did see one other thing today, which is that the National Library has unveiled its archive of bygone Australian websites in all of their retro, daggy glory. You're having a look there on the screen. Now, these are the basic websites from the 1990s. They include The Wiggles, John Howard, who, by the way, was the first PM to have a site. Now, it's a trove, we think, that somehow kind of feels like ancient history and recent history all at the same time.
One of our best Australian export stories
there
ever. There's the website.
There's the website.
Just so basic. And there's the PM John Howard's website with the kind of mahogany-looking, or the timber strip on the side. What do you think, guys? Trip down memory lane, amazing.
You look at that and think that's not very flash. But clearly it's part of our cultural heritage. And absolutely has to be.
So a chunk of Australian history. right there.
Just like
digital.
old newspapers, old audio clips, black and white television footage.
But it is a little bit more involved than that. So the system itself is called Pandora. And they've recently just put out a call as of today, I think, for all the current election campaigns that are happening right now in New South Wales, for everyone to submit their campaign documents and their websites to retain for the archive. And what they will do is that if you allow them access to your website, they will maintain that software and keep it in good nick so that whenever it needs to be accessed, it will always be updated in perpetuity. But the system itself is called Pandora, which I find quite ironic, because if you open Pandora's box and you're archiving all of this stuff and half of it is political, a lot of it might come back and the lid of Pandora's box might slam back down on you because it's going to be maintained. So it will be kept forever. Yeah, they're going to update the software, they're going to keep it in good nick, make sure it all works, no bugs, everything, if you agree to archive it. So I haven't said yes yet.
I think it's like flared pans.
For your small business party.
Yeah, I haven't said yes yet.
Why?
I want to find out a little bit more about it and just see exactly what will be the purpose of it besides historical archive, and who will have access to it, and will they be able to take stuff from it and use it, because there's a whole copyright issue here too. There's a whole IP world. You know, we've written a lot of our own code, we've developed a lot of our own software in different ways. What will happen to that? So there's, you know, first world problems, first world questions.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
Pandora's box.
Pandora's box certainly reminds you that things don't disappear off the internet, right? Like you think what was going on in the 90s and the internet, I don't think you'd spare a thought for it. And then here it is, you get reminded.
We were very grateful to have those websites back in.
Oh, exactly.
With the blue links and everything.
That cost $10,000 for one page and no one could edit it.
But those news websites had a lot less clickbait. There were a lot less celebrities, I reckon, on those news websites.
Well, some of those ads later than the 90s.
No ads, exactly. Gosh, that's come a long way, hasn't it?
Well, they'd have to cleanse it of ads as well, because what if they were kept in perpetuity?
True, yeah.
I'm just saying.
These are good questions.
Just saying.
Absolutely.
Too much thought.
That's great.
All right. Well, until next time, Angela Vathoukas and Greg Baxter, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us as always.